Well, Steve Garvey, candidate for U.S. Senate, thank you so much for joining us here in Bakersfield today.
Thanks, Jenny. It's great to be with you.
Let's just start with how your campaign has been going. It's been almost a year since you launched it. What's been the biggest strategies? What's been most rewarding? Tell us about it all.
Well, we started on October 10th. You know, there's never a good date. You pick a date that seems to be when you're ready. You put the team together. You've gone over and studied policies, and unfortunately the Israeli war broke out on the 7th. So even though we were still able to do a significant amount of interviews and media around the country and California, we still had to wait and have reverence towards what was happening there before our campaign got even more momentum. But where we've come from in these basically 9 to 10 months has been pretty amazing. You know, you start at zero, but the messaging, I think, is something that I've kind of, as you know, grown up in the sports and entertainment business and kind of used to working with the press and able to do positive stories and sometimes dealing with difficult issues. But to be able to represent my profession in sports has basically been with communications. So, and as you could see today, in this vast state of 40 million people, it takes a while to get through each level of awareness. You know, your first level of people who get up every day and concerned with government and politics, and then the casual evening viewers, and then you get to people, you know, once a week, and then the people who get up at 4:30 in the morning and come home at 7 and don't have time for anything but the fundamentals. So we've come a long way, as they say. It's in the stretch run now of kind of a 9-inning game, but it's myself against Congressman Schiff, and we've got momentum.
And I mean, I think you know this as well, you've acknowledged this, but the biggest struggle for you in deep blue California is running as a Republican to represent the entire state. But you were one of the top 2 vote getters. You're advancing to the November election. So tell us more about the partisanship you've dealt with.
Well, I first came to California on September 1st of 1969. I was called up by the Dodgers and put a Dodger uniform on for the first time, and my dreams came true. Longer story, bat boy for the Brooklyn Dodgers, spring training Florida, many years before that. But that began a 20-year career, and then having taken that and a wonderful, blessed career, playing for great teams, Los Angeles and San Diego, great players, and then the experience of going out every day. Not too many people have 30 to 40,000 people watch them at work every day. So it makes you very humble. It also reinforces your commitment and your passion for what you're doing. And I was able to take that, and of course living in California, to create businesses, to work with charities, to get involved in community events, so that people understood and knew that the Steve Garvey on the field was pretty much the same guy off, who was dedicated to playing the game for the fans, and for my city and for the teams, but to be a Californian. And I've taken that to heart. And then over a year ago, I woke up one morning and turned the TV on, and it was a dysfunctional Washington, and career politicians weren't representing us. And I had a dream, and you know, you can't figure out what the dream was. And I tapped my wife on the shoulder and I said, honey, let's run for the U.S. Senate. And she looked at me as any dutiful wife would do, and turned over. And then 10 seconds later, she turned back and she said, don't you think you're a little young? And I remembered the Ronald Reagan phrase, which I altered a little bit. I think I can overcome my youth and inexperience. And that became a pathway to finding out if we could put together a team, a very experienced team, that understood California and really the country. And then that pathway, which you talked about, the disparity between registered Democrats and Republicans. Is there a way for a moderate voice who people know, and now Steve Garvey 2.0, who wants to represent the people? And I always said, I never took the field for Republicans, Democrats, Independents, but I took it for all the fans, and I'm running for all the people, and my opponent can't say that.
And you're here likely knowing the voter demographics. Obviously, all sorts of voter profiles exist here in Kern County too, but almost surely Kern County is going to vote in favor of you, at least all of the Republicans here. And you may be aware of the term Valleycrats, right? They're Democrats here in the Central Valley. Sure. that very much agree with how Republicans would handle agriculture, oil, water, etc. So tell us more about how you're targeting Kern County, and also, you know, what this unique deep pocket of red kind of means for you, again, as a Republican, aspiring Republican senator from California.
Yeah, and I call myself a moderate because I actually grew up when President Reagan was starting to come into prominence in the 70s, as I was. I was building my career in baseball. He was building his career from television to politics. And then starting in the late 70s, I got a call from his office. Would I introduce him at certain rallies, and when he was starting to run for not only governor, but then president. And that's where my foundation was. And over these 50 years, spending time in Kern County and in Bakersfield, doing a variety of things. And I had a school named after me in Lindsay, which is an hour away, which is so very unique and interesting, for 33 years. And every year I would come and visit there. So the Central Valley is very, very important to me. It's historical in terms of my relationship, but also it's historical in California. This is a generational Californians who have invested in this area, not only business-wise, but family-wise, in their histories, and bringing people in to grow the businesses that you just talked about. It could be oil, it could be gas, it could be ranching, it could be agriculture. So Central California is vital to the success of California, this country, and the world, because we feed the world. We provide energy for the world. So it has to be a priority when you're, in terms of when you're running for office. And in my case, a federal position that has influence in state politics, but also will have a significant influence in making sure that Kern County and Bakersfield and all of the towns that make up this county and Central California get what they need to continue being prosperous and leading the country and world.
You talked about some of the issues already facing the Central Valley, but when it comes to Bakersfield, when it comes to Kern County, where are some of the biggest areas you think we need more federal assistance, more federal funds?
Well, in deregulation. You know, I'm a free market, capitalist thinking person, supply side economics. I always think that Kern County, that California and America are greatest. Well, we have two parties, number one, and this is a one-party state now. That's why I'm running to be the other voice. And that we let America and California do what we do best, and that's have a voice in our decisions, each of us as voters, as citizens, to be able to determine our destiny. And when you're regulated, it puts constraints on the opportunity to be the best you can be, and like I always say, to reach for the moon, and if you fall short, you'll be a star. So I think deregulation is one of the first areas. And of course, as we know, the regulations put on gas and oil by this administration has strangled the economy in America, and the inflation has been rampant. So we need to get back to that supply side that lets Kern County be the best it can be.
So when it comes to oil specifically, are you saying, look, government hands off? What specifically, what does it look like in terms of giving more authority to Kern County oil producers?
Yeah, I think we have to think of two things. We have to think of affordability and accountability. And I think when the oil industry is allowed, and with good common sense and with safety, to be able to, whether it's drilling for oil, whether it's for fracking, there's no reason why California is importing 60 to 70% of its energy when we have all we need right here, and should be the leader in this country. And when regulation restrains that, then I think everybody's frustrated, and it has a ripple effect in the next generation, not only in oil and gas, but in ranching and farming also. I constantly hear the next generation is concerned about margins and the amount that has to be paid in order to keep that family business going.
And homelessness, Steve, huge issue in California overall, but specifically here in Kern County too. I mean, walking in, you mentioned that you've seen quite a few homeless individuals already here in town. So, I mean, the new Supreme Court ruling gives each state more authority to handle that homelessness crisis. But what's your response to that ruling? And also, what are the concrete ways you propose we kind of further tackle this issue?
I've said two things right from the first day. Number one, I will always be honest with the people. And number two, at this point in my life, I'll admit it, I'm 75. I've had a wonderful life, could be doing a lot of other things. But that morning when I woke up, I had this dream, and I think ultimately what it was God saying, it's time for you and your voice to stand up for the people of California. And if I can do that, if I can be their voice, then we can suddenly talk about all the things that need to be done in California. And that affordability is one thing, whether it's from the dining room table in the morning to the gas station, to preparing our children for their education, to be able to save. We need to give Californians a voice again on what their needs are, so that when we're restricted in key areas of our life, then I think it suppresses us. And I just heard something 2 days ago. It's called the Misery Index. And California leads the country in Misery Index, which is a measure of inflation, joblessness, and frustration by the people. And that should never happen. We should be the leader in being able to determine our future, and that we put a smile on our face every day when we get up and go to work, and we're happy when we come home knowing that we are gaining on the American dream and the California dream.
I want to touch on homelessness specifically a bit more, Steve. First, really quickly, do you agree with the Supreme Court ruling that states should have more power when it comes to clearing encampments? Because you are going for a federal position after all.
Sorry, I deviated for a second.
No, you're all good. There's a lot to talk about here.
Well, I would, again, always be truthful with the people and always be concerned and run a race with common sense and compassion and consensus building. And that I will go where the people want me to go to get the true answers. So homelessness meaning priority. I've been downtown San Diego and Los Angeles, which these places are war zones, Sacramento, San Francisco, and actually got down on a knee and talked, as you and I were talking face to face, and asking the homeless, tell me about your day, tell me about your week. How long have you been here? Are you getting your necessities? Do you want to be here? And a lot of them, and you can look into their eyes and see a glazed look, that they're affected by probably drugs, mental illness. But do they want to be there? Absolutely not. So that's why, if the opportunity is to help them off the street, and I believe we should, because we also have to deal with our communities too, and with our small businesses, and the access people have to have in the streets. And in these big cities, you can't walk on the sidewalks because of the encampments right there. In downtown Los Angeles, people die every week. You never hear about that. There's fires because of the encampments. And the people I were talking to had an old coffee can with some balsa wood that they were trying to light with a match just to stay warm. This shouldn't happen in America.
So do we clear encampments? Are you on board with clearing encampments? And if so, where did we put those individuals afterwards?
Well, the challenge always is, if you clear the encampments, where are you going to put these people? And there's great programs. In San Diego, there's Father Joe's Villages, which provide the environment and the home for a year to prepare you in probably a 5 or 6 program, just like the Alpha Project in San Diego. The Dream Center in Los Angeles, a 13-story old hospital that every year is able to serve hundreds and hundreds of homeless that come off the streets and get them to the point where they're ready to walk back into society, ready to get a job, where they eventually have dignity in their hearts again. I think that's the compassionate. Let's get them off the streets in a prepared environment so that they have a shelter and a program, and they have to do this voluntarily. You have to talk to them, and that's where the disciples go into the community and talk to them about the future. Follow me, and then make the declaration. So I think it should happen. I think recently there was a bill, and maybe it's already been not only proposed, executed, about taking the homeless off the street, which I believe in that. But let's have a place for them to go. Let's be ready when this declaration. Let's not use this for political purposes and for sound bites. Let's really come up with a program that allows them to take that first step and gets them back into the dignity of their hearts.
Are you referring to Governor Newsom essentially threatening to take funds away from counties if they don't start clearing encampments? Because that was a recent story we did. The governor said, look, in light of this grants pass ruling, individual counties need to start taking action and need to start clearing encampments. Otherwise, I will divert those funds elsewhere.
I would never threaten by taking money away from local entities. But I think, you know what leaders do? They don't talk the talk, they walk the walk, and they go into the communities, into the cities, actually walk the streets like I have, and then look at the issue and talk to them as a leader and say, this is what I need you to do. You will have Sacramento, state, local government support, and you will get federal support from senators like Steve Garvey, who love California and only want the best for it.
And homeless individuals are often associated with a lot of the crime that happens, especially when it comes to retail theft that we're seeing a surge in nowadays. Where do you stand on Proposition 47, Steve? And I ask that because Kern County and our local leaders like the district attorney and our sheriff, they are big supporters of amending Prop 47. So where do you stand on that?
Right from the beginning. I thought it was a recipe for disaster, and it has been. It was a bill that was clouded in innuendo, and you always knew that it was going to get to the heart of crime, and that ultimately DAs were going to have to be, like here, stand up and be the final say in prosecuting criminals to the fullest extent. And you do that, but not taking a felon and turning his crime into a misdemeanor and letting him walk out the back door as the officer is still trying to fill out the paperwork in the office. You have to treat crime and treat it seriously. Every great society and state and country is built on strong criminal justice, and that's where we have to go. My opposition believes in defunding the police, believes in closing jails and prisons, and believes in erasing the border. I mean, Adam Schiff on his watch the last 25 years has it, look where we are now. It's worse than ever because he hasn't stood up as an individual. I'm not going to vote down party lines. He has voted 97, 98% behind the party line. I will always say being the voice of the people means listening, means consensus building, and then when you share your ideas and work out something, like President Reagan did with Tip O'Neill way back in the 80s, right? There's a great example of two politicians who were 180 degrees opposed, but worked together for the best interest of people. And that's what I'm going to do to make a difference. I'll be a one-term senator. I've said that. And they've always said, oh, you'll be a lame duck. And I said, do you really think Steve Garvey will be a lame duck in Congress when major issues people will come to me and say, what are you doing? And I will say, I'm doing the work of the people.
And Steve, I know you got places to be, so final few questions from me. Immigration is another very big issue. Again, nationwide, statewide, but specific to Kern County, right? A lot of immigrants make up a significant part of our agriculture and construction workforce. I know you said mass deportation is not the answer, right? There needs to be a deeper, more long-term solution. More specifically, tackle that point for us, because a lot of people in the Republican Party do want to go ahead with mass deportation.
Let's first of all be reasonable about this. We can't shut down the border for the simple reason you're talking about now. There are Hispanics, Latinos, excuse me, who are coming in, who are doing vital work for the businesses and entities we've talked about before, for gas and oil, for farming, for ranching, that are generational. Their families have grown with the farmers and ranchers and become part of the fiber of that. So we need to constantly make sure that there's a pathway that's probably a joint effort between the entities here and government and the workers, so that as they come in, as they spend time, they also are beginning a pathway to citizenship. Now, I'm willing to take what is 10 years now to citizenship and cut it in half when people show that they are really contributing to our society, to local, state, and levels there. So, and what we'll do is we'll also reinvest in judicial decisions made at the border. We'll eliminate the number of immigrants coming in who have done it the right way by going to embassies around the world. They have been given papers. They are waiting in line, and then watching as now 10, 12, 15 million illegal immigrants have come across and jump them in line. That's not the American way. When you do it through the right process, and by the way, if you were to go to another country, if I was to go to China and want to live there, I wouldn't become Chinese. If I was to go to Belgium, and I wouldn't be a Belgian. When you come to the United States, you have the opportunity to become an American, become the fiber of this country. So let's do it that way, but do it the right way. put more money into stopping the crime of fentanyl, of human trafficking. Let's attack the cartels that are providing terrorism within this country. Let's reinforce ICE, who actually goes into domestic America and will find these terrorists. So let's support them. Let's be reasonable about this. Let's get back to crime, the economy, and the border being our three most important issues right now that take political courage. And I have the political courage to go back. Career politicians have failed you. Adam Schiff has failed you. So let's get a fresh, new, young face that's going to go to work for the people.
You mentioned President Reagan a lot, and I think a lot of Republicans like yourself really look up to him. They consider, his presidency like a high point for your party in many ways. The state of the nation now, as you very well know, is very different. It's very partisan. It's become polarized. Again, I hate to touch on partisanship once again, but amid all of that, how do you persuade Californians? Again, you mentioned the undecided voters, the moderates, but just Californians as a whole, how do you persuade them that you should follow Pete Wilson in being, the latest the latest senator from California to be elected, to have people vote for you in confidence?
Well, two things. I'm very concerned about our global presence of being a deterrent to all of our enemies, which are China and Russia and North Korea and Iran. But I'm just concerned about an implosion from within in this country, where there's a systematic attack on the family and parents being able to, our single greatest creation is our children, to be able to protect them and prepare them for the future, and attacked on Judeo-Christian principles and beliefs, which I feel strongly about. A unified effort by career politicians to run for power and money and not for the people. And like I said before, as a one-term U.S. Senator, that means I'll step up to the plate every day, sorry to use that term, but true, and fight for the people, and not for a job after those 6 years, but to fight for them. And I think if we, for one election, forget about party lines, and when you look at Adam Schiff and myself, and you listen to us, make your decision from your heart as to who do you think is really going to represent you, your family, and your future. And I think when it's all said and done, even though a guy like myself is only going to be at this less than a year, as to an opponent for 25 years, it's time for change.
How does the Harris-Walz campaign influence your campaign here? Because I think nationwide, and specifically with President Trump, it's kind of been a setback for them.
Well, that's the office of the presidency is it's its own race in itself. I have probably the most difficult race in America, running as a moderate in California. But California has never been as great as when a moderate and a conservative, and even voices from the left have come together. But now there is no voice from the right. It's been suppressed. And it's about time that I stood up, as I have been, and Californians are stepping up all throughout the state. And just vote from your heart and your soul as to who you want to represent you every day.
And you've disclosed that in the March primary, you did vote for former President Trump. Right now, would you vote for him again?
I don't know if that was a yes or not. was that a drum roll? I think the opportunity to vote is the single greatest currency we have in America. And I think it's personal, and I think it should be well thought out. And I've been tried to be painted to the far right and MAGA. Well,
and I know you've been asked this question multiple times, but a month ago in an interview, you did say if the election were right now, I would vote for President Trump.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any deviation between Harris and Biden administration as to Harris and Walz. It's still extremely progressive. It's the detriment of especially Californians, hardworking Californians. So I would vote for Trump again. I mean, that's just my decision. And as I would think people would vote for me on my merit, we're different personalities, obviously. People said, you're much more Reagan-esque. And I said, well, it's because I'm moderate, and I think I'm thoughtful, and I'm a man who's got a large family, and I want to protect them. And I know that the things I believe in are what true Americans believe in, and I believe in the Constitution and the right for us to have a destiny that we can control.
Steve, last thing for me, Congressman Schiff's primary strategy, which you've definitely heard about over and over again, elevating you, right? Portraying you and kind of free advertising for you in a way to elevate you and ultimately face you in the November election. It proved successful. It boosted Republican turnout. Here we are. I mean, I'm just curious what your reaction to is, because at the end of the day, that means Schiff thinks you were the easiest opponent to face come November.
Well, I think the most important thing is within 2 months, I was in a solid second place against the cabal of Barbara Lee and Katie Porter and Adam Schiff. And I shook things up here in California. As a moderate, it's been 35 years since anyone has reached a general. So let's dispel right now that he alleviated me all the way into the general. After the primary election, which took 5 weeks, it's amazing how things take so long here, I had beaten him by 300,000 votes in the temporary, and we were literally dead even in the general, which I think speaks volumes for a short amount of time, reaching 40 million people. And we've continued to grow. I always say don't look at the polls because they're made in generalities and metrics right now, but talk to people and ask them who they would rather have represent them. So it's going to be a great 80 days or something like that. And I know I'll be the next elected senator from California and represent the people 24/7, every day and every way.
Well, best of luck to you, Steve. Thank you again for your time. Anything I missed that you want to address with your Kern County Central Valley voters?
Well, that you showed up for me in the general. And I want to thank you. Primary. Yeah. Well, I hope you showed up for me in the general also, but the primary, and I had come here a couple times before, and I had actually gone out and seen the Kern County water bank and talked to the ranchers and farmers. And people know I care about them. I've been coming here a long time. And I continue to hope that you will share with me, be part of Team Garvey. You know, we've, at stevegarvey.com, we now have over 150,000 supporters, which is amazing. So I thank you, God bless, and I can't wait to have all of us share in the decision on November 5th.
Thank you again, Steve. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.